What's up, everybody? Welcome to Simply Cyber Firesides. I hope you enjoyed that intro. I think I discovered about 20 seconds into it that you were not actually listening to the intro of Pantera Walk. I was listening to it in my ear because I was actually off stage, but hopefully you did hear it. I did pull it in somewhat. A man like Brandon Poole deserves a walk-on song, and Pantera Walk really does capture that, especially for what we're going to be doing today. This is Simply Cyber Firesides, where we bring you conversations with the brightest minds in cybersecurity. I'm your host, Dr. Gerald Auger, and today we are pleased to be joined by Brandon Poole, founder and principal consultant at Panoptcy Security. With 15 years of technical experience spanning system administration, network security, and incident response, Brandon has built and led security programs across nonprofit, government, and private sectors. Now, as an experienced incident responder who's tackled advanced persistent threats and collaborated with law enforcement and ISACs, Brandon brings valuable insights from the front lines of cybersecurity. He's established vulnerability management programs, SOCs, and business continuity initiatives throughout his career and serves on the SANS GIAC advisory board. And today we're going to tap into Brandon's wealth of knowledge and discuss why you're doing cyber all wrong. A bit of a spicy topic, right? Spicy! And we are going to get into it. And as I mentioned, as a little teaser, he's established and an expert in vulnerability management programs, SOCs, and business continuity initiatives. So maybe we're going to ask him why you're doing cyber all wrong. And just so we're clear, I'm not saying you, Justin Gold, and you, Alpha Sierra. This is the royal you, the industry, kind of the established meta of what is normal and why are we treating that as normal? Because it's wrong. And we're going to get Brandon's hot takes on all of these. And the banter is going to be great. Please join us. Throw your questions in chat. If you've got hot takes of your own on the things we're talking about, drop them in chat. We want this to be hyper engaged and a really good time. Brandon's a longtime member of the Simply Cyber community. He's a longtime friend of mine personally, and we're going to have a great talk today. So ladies and gentlemen, buckle up, strap in. We're going whole hog on this one with Brandon Poole from Panoptcy. Let's get into it. What's up, Brandon Poole? How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Good. You ready to bust myths and break people's hearts?
I'm always breaking hearts.
I love it. I love it. So again, like I said, drop your questions in chat. I want to say what's up. A lot of great people in here. FedEx, Taekwon Gong, Jay Gold, Haircut Fish, Chris K. Hall, all y'all in here. Carrie, Chris Whitlock, good to see you guys. So Brandon, let's just launch into it. So what a lot of people don't know is Brandon and I talk at least once a month for like kind of a professional to professional thing. What are we talking about? And we always start off with like a good agenda, and then it devolves into us just kind of like pointing out issues and challenges and frustrations and stuff like that. And that's where this show concept really came from. So Brandon, let's get right into it. Let's start with vulnerability management. Why are you doing vulnerability management wrong?
Oh man, so there's multiple ways you can do it wrong in my experience. So like I've had a lot of like customers, clients over the years. It's like come in like, vulnerability management is like such a nightmare for us. And a lot of times it's because of multiple reasons. So first of all, it's like there's tons of vulnerabilities. We don't know how to prioritize them, don't know which ones to work, how to do it. Like they're just piling up. All of my metrics I'm giving to the board, like they just look terrible, lose all my funding. So it's a big issue, but like one of the ways that I see a lot of people kind of like just absolutely screw up vulnerability management is you have like your product, your Tenable, your Nexpose, your Qualys, whatever it is, goes out, scans your whole network. And then what they do is they come back and they say, okay, I'm going to use this proprietary risk metric. Let's look at my top 10 most riskiest assets. And then what they do is they focus on just trying to get the scores down, those top 10 like riskiest assets. And they might succeed at that, but unfortunately, like all of the other proprietary made up risk scores for all the other assets pretty much like start growing up because you're focusing all on these top 10, which these top 10 might not even be the most critical. So that's the way a lot of people mess up. Like a better, I guess, use of that is to look holistically across the whole environment, try to knock it out that way. So, look and see this vulnerability impacts, 80% of my environment. I can patch it at scale, yada, yada, yada. So that's way number one. Way number two is CVSS. So I think that's everyone's heard of CVSS, right? Everyone knows what CVSS is.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about how you are not using CVSS correctly.
Okay.
So
let me get a chair.
So CVSS commonly, it's our nice little score. We get out there, we get like a CVSS 9. We got to go patch it, right? Let's jump on it. Let's go patch it. So I don't know how many people are familiar. So if you go to, pretty much any of your vendors, MVD, any of these places you normally get like the CVSS score from, you get this 9.0. But what's interesting is it really a 9.0? Is it really? And I guess
there's always like the context of like your environment, right?
Well, yes, and I guess this is what I'm going to hit on. So, CVSS was launched like back in 2005. And when it was launched in 2005, it was launched actually by the FIRST organization. You can go and you can look them up. They're the ones that maintain the CVSS standard. They're also the ones that go around and certify official certs like the CERT ones. But when it came out, they actually stated like it doesn't measure risk at all. CVSS is not a measure of risk, like how risky a vulnerability is. It is a measure of the technical severity of a vulnerability, as in like how difficult or how difficult is it to actually go through and possibly do like a bug fix on it. So it's actually from the software management side, like the technicality of going through.
Wait, really?
Yes.
Stop.
Yeah. It was designed to actually be used in like Bugzilla for prioritizing bugs. So
all right, well that's interesting, dude. I mean, because they've upgraded it from 3 and 4, and
yep. So we'll actually touch on that. So
all right.
in 2005, CVSS came out in 2005, and pretty much it came out, and a couple people adopted it, and everybody else is just like, dude, this is crap. Like, not any good, nothing there. So when they actually launched version 2, which came out 2000, I want to say late 2007, early 2008. I'm sure someone will go in the comments after this is all over and be like, Brandon doesn't know what he's talking about. God. But about that time frame is like when they actually made a big push. They actually partnered with vendors. They redid all the scoring. That's actually when it got like really wide scale adoption. Now, what was real interesting is about the same time, that's when Microsoft wasn't a big fan of CVSS version 1. They also released their exploitability index that you see now in all their security bulletins around the same time. So they kind of came up with their own standard around that same time. But CVSS 2 came out, and once again, it still was not a measure of risk. Actually, today, if you go to the current standard on the FIRST website, they still tell you the CVSS score is not a measure of risk. So CVSS 3 came out 2015. I want to say like early fall 2015. And CVSS 3, they redid all the scoring. It absolutely sucked. Everyone like refused to go over to 3 and stuck with 2. So in 2019, they made CVSS 3.1, which scoring. And what was interesting is that's what we now know as CVSS 3 is 3.1. One of the biggest issues now, guess getting off the whole timeline, the history of all of this, one of the biggest issues, like I said, CVSS doesn't measure risk. And even if it did measure risk, we still are doing it wrong. So if you pull up the CVSS standard for 2, 3, 3.1, or even like the version 4, which was released, I guess, officially back in summer of 2023. So like a year ago.
Very recently. I do want to touch on 4 as well.
Yes, if you actually look at it, like what what the National Vulnerability Database (NVD) for those who are unaware, which is where most people go for that, it gives you what's called the CVSS base score.
Mhm.
It's just like a certain number of factors, and that's what everyone seems to prioritize this stuff off of. So even if it was risk, which it's not, you just prioritize it off what's known as the base score. If you go to first, pull up the CVSS standard. If you can't get sleep at night, it's a great way to like fall asleep. Like just reading like this huge standard of how all this stuff works. But there's actually other factors they take into account. So there's like a temporal component, which I think no longer exists in 4. There's all these different components that actually helps you customize and actually will adjust that CVSS base score depending on environments and factors in your environment. Most people I talk to don't even know these other components exist because they've never read the standard. They're just like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about, man? Like, I just ran like Nessus said that found this vulnerability. It's a 8.9. I need to get it patched. And it's like, listen, man,
Well,
this is
okay.
not.
So a couple of things, all right. A couple of things. One, I do wanna say, like, okay, so I didn't know about how CVSS was originally intended, and I believe you, right, that it was technical severity of the vulnerability. But when we look at vulnerabilities that come out now, and you look at the score, I mean, typically, I mean, I almost personally treat the scores as like buckets, right? So if it's a CVSS score of like 1 to 5, it's like whatever, not like super sweaty. And then when it gets into like 7, it's like, okay, what's going on? 8, like to me, 9 means you're getting closer to like remote code execution. Maybe 9/8's unauthenticated. So the number as it gets closer to 10, and 10 active exploitations happening, you never see one that's a 10 that isn't being actively exploited. And I don't want to talk about CVSS 4 yet because that's like IPv6. It's like it's a nightmare. But I mean, can you see how those, like, even if it's been appropriated, not how it was intended, but appropriated, on how bad that particular vulnerability is? I haven't thought of it as how risky is it. I've always thought of it, the score of a CVSS score, as how easily exploitable and is this bug, and if it does get exploited, how bad could it turn out? So remote code execution, unauthenticated, that's super easy to exploit because anyone can do it from anywhere in the world, and they can do the worst possible thing by running arbitrary code. So that's how I've always looked at it. I'll throw it back to you, Brandon.
Well, this is why you, unroyal you, is wrong, Jerry. No, so like you bring up like great points. This is like often a pushback I get whenever I talk to customers. They're like, dude, it's best effort, yada yada yada. This is what it is. So this is usually where I start the next question. Okay, how many? If we're looking at buckets, so I think buckets for. I think the way they bucket it, it's like CVSS, like I think it's like 7 or 7.5 or 7.5. Anything above that's what we call high bucket.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you, Jerry. How many of the things that fall in that high bucket, according to CVSS and NIST that's running the National Vulnerability Database, NVD, how many of those do you think are actually exploited in the wild?
I don't know that. I mean, again, I don't know that, but I do want to point out I'm also not I'm not lazy where like I'm going to take the raw export results from a vulnerability management scanner and be like, all right, this is it. It's, you have to give consideration to what devices we're talking about: internet facing versus internal, mission critical versus, whatever Carl's WordPress thing. So there is extra context and dimension to the analysis piece of it. But are you trying to make the argument that there could be a CVSS score vulnerability of 6 that is way worse than something else that's a 9 on the same device?
What I'm getting at is CVSS just sucks.
Oh.
So this is actually well known. So like the biggest thing is that like end of last year was the last time I got these numbers. So if you go and you look at how many like actual like CVEs have been, essentially assigned out there. So the end of last year when I looked, there was over 330,000 CVEs that have an official CVE number. All right. 20,000 of those approximately came out in 2023 alone. If you were to look at the number of CVEs that come out every year, it grows exponentially. Right? So it's crazy. The issue is most organizations are like, all right, we're going to rely on like NVD. So NIST runs the National Vulnerability Database. That's what we're going to go with. So here's the thing. NVD is missing over 100,000 vulnerabilities. Don't have a CVSS score. In fact, I think it was earlier this year, they pretty much said like, hey, like we can't keep up. we can't calculate all this. Like it just
didn't they recently ask for volunteers to help? Like I feel like that just happened.
I believe so. But I guess once again, what I'm getting at is the issue is there's more vulnerabilities than you can patch. All right. Businesses aren't in the money to like patch systems. I mean, if I guess, you know, someone like me, maybe I could get a job patching systems as a security provider, but you know, like Walmart, Target, the car dealership down the street, your bank, they don't make money patching vulnerabilities. They don't want to hire 1 million IT people to patch their systems. Like that's not the way they make money. They lose money by having to have so much overhead. So the only thing they want to patch is whatever's riskiest. CVSS is not a measure of risk, what we talked about. So FIRST, once again, owned the standard, but what a lot of people don't know is FIRST is a big think tank, and they had multiple groups kind of come together and say, you know what, CVSS sucks. It doesn't measure risk. We got to come up with a different way because we can't just tell people to patch all the things.
I got a sounder for that.
You got to patch it.
There we go. So what happened was there was a couple different groups that came together and started collaborating. And actually, I guess it was like 2019, 2020. 2 new standards came out, which not necessarily has like the same awareness as CVSS. So the first one that actually released is what's called EPSS, which is the Exploit Predictive something. I can't remember what the SS stands for.
I'll pull it up.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah,
you're wonderful.
I'm here to produce exploit prediction scoring system.
Yes, so EPSS came out, and actually EPSS version 1, when it came out, like I said, it came out in 2019, 2020, and you can read about it right here. What they actually said was like, listen, if you look at all these CVEs out there, only a small subset of them get exploited. All right, just teeny tiny little bit. If we can figure out how to just patch those vulnerabilities, people don't have to patch anything else. Like we just patch the stuff that people are exploiting. But the thing is, like, how do we know what people's going to exploit? So what they did was this thinking group got together like some of the biggest companies, a bunch of data scientists, and they created, unfortunately, it's a closed source model. They created this closed source model that uses all kind of crazy telemetry. So same factors you normally get in CVSS score, but then they also were scraping Twitter for sentiment and looking at, I think it was at one point in time, like over 100,000 different factors. And what EPSS gives you is the probability of this vulnerability being exploited in mass over the next 30 days.
Wow.
Now,
that's yeah. How do you get that EPSS score? I mean,
actually, Jared, if you bring up the website, we can actually go through it. Okay.
I'll bring it up. Keep talking.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to make it look pretty for stream though.
Well, it's not going to necessarily look pretty because we're going to do an API through your web browser. An API call through the web browser. So
okay.
Not going to look pretty, but we're going to do it. So, essentially what happened was EPSS was the first one that was released. After EPSS, or about the same time, they also came out with the SSVC. The SSVC was actually kind of like a model. It's fantastic. Most of the time where you see that usually is in OT environments, because you look at system disruption and a bunch of other things. You talk about all those contextual factors.
Yep.
SSVC is just like another model that came up with, that takes into account all these contextual factors and when you can patch stuff. And it's like a huge decision tree, essentially what it is. Great white paper on that. But SSDC kind of came out at the same time, and these two standards by far are 1,000 times better than CVSS as far as predicting things. Now, no one's mentioned it yet, but we also have the KEV, right? CISA KEV.
What is it?
The KEV.
The KEV?
KEV. 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 CISA. Come on.
Oh. I don't see. Okay. I think of that as a different thing, but I do like that. Are you about to crap on this too?
I'm tipping sacred cows, man.
Bro, I love the known exploited vulnerability catalog. Go ahead. Kick me in the
I'm sorry. So overall, it actually is like a really good thing. So
don't try to back it up now. Go ahead.
Listen. I'm gonna treat you like a client, Jerry. I'm gonna treat you just like I do all my clients. So a lot of them are like, Brandon, that's awesome. This EPSS score and stuff like that. But CISA came out with this KEV catalog, and we've been using this KEV catalog. And why can't I just use the KEV, Brandon? Like, it's a lot easier than me adopting new standards and having to rewrite things. Like, let's just go with KEV. So CISA's done a great job in KEV. All right, not gonna knock them. They went through and they've gathered everything that's ever been exploited in the wild and put it in one place. So we know this is getting exploited. It's not stuff we think; it's stuff we know. There's two issues. First of all, KEV is reactive. So that means someone actually has to be exploited and hit with it first before it ends up on the catalog, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So it's like, I don't know if I really want to be reactive in cybersecurity, because that's a way to make me have to update my resume if I'm getting breached because of vulnerabilities. So I don't really want to be reactive. The other thing is, like, KEV sometimes is the most accurate. So there's a lot of, so if you go through KEV, the way KEV works is they don't actually validate anything. It is all self-reports by vendors. So if you look on KEV, there's a lot of vulnerabilities on there for Apple iPhone. A lot of these Apple iPhone vulnerabilities, if you read Apple's own notes, only had one person actually exploited. Nation state. Listen, don't know everyone's threat models. Not saying that you wouldn't get exploited with that, but like, should that be necessarily prioritized if it's like one nation state threat actor with super duper elite hackers? Should I prioritize that as much as like what all the ransomware folks are like hitting in mass? Probably not.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like, it can take a long time for things to get on KEV. So like a good example is last year there was like an Adobe vulnerability. Came out. It took 10 months after Adobe said it was being exploited in the wild. It took 10 months for it to end up on the KEV. Actually, there was one last year too that is like 6 or 7 years old that Microsoft had reported 6 or 7 years ago. Never was on the KEV, but it started popping up again, being exploited in the wild, and it was added on there 6 or 7 years later.
See, that's interesting. I actually thought that was a vulnerability that wasn't being seen exploited from 6 or 7 years ago, and then it started getting exploited, and that's why they added it to KEV. That was a mistake.
No, so like KEV has no. So like, it's interesting to talk to people. So like, CISA, of course, is like a federal institution. They do have money. They do try to do a lot of good in the community. Not knocking anything they do. Fantastic, right? But like, they don't have the resources to set up and like put like a bunch of honeypots all over the world, right? And collect what's being actively exploited. So they rely a lot on partnerships, a lot on vendors to report this stuff. And like, when KEV was like founded in like 2021, like what they did was they said, listen, we're going to go over like the last like couple of years of everything that's been reported exploited in the wild to vendors. We're just going to put it on that. So like, well, I was just bringing up like the 6-year-old vulnerability. When KEV was founded in like 2021, 2022, somewhere in that time frame, they didn't go back 6 years because they're like, 6 years old, people have already probably exploited it. Hell, to be honest, it might have been like a Windows XP vulnerability, and they're like, Windows XP's end of life. So it just didn't end up on the list. You have to start somewhere. You can't go back to the beginning of time. But the thing is, there's still people out there with those kind of systems. There's still gaps in there. Even new vulnerabilities, like I just said, the Adobe one that existed, it took 10 months for them to actually get on there because, they're slammed.
Yeah.
So There's nothing wrong with KEV. It's definitely a factor that you can take into consideration, but it shouldn't be the only thing. Same thing with EPSS. EPSS actually, they do have, like I said, it's closed source. The data is public. You can actually go to the website. There's an API. You can like copy and paste like the CVE in. It gives you all this stuff about the likelihood of it being exploited, a bunch of other stuff. EPSS is fantastic, but it's not a silver bullet. So OT environments, there's not enough information for any of your OT vulnerabilities. Doesn't really work there, but SSVC works fantastic there. I guess what I'm getting at is like, as a collective, a community, a lot of us put far too much weight in CVSS, like especially if there's things like EPSS out there, which is much more data centric and predictive. You've got KEV, which is reactionary but still a little bit better. You've got SSVC, which you can customize and kind of create your own decision tree there. Really taking like all these factors, mix and matching them will actually yield a better result. That's just going and determining what the patch share. We haven't even determined like the other factors that you were talking about.
Like, we haven't even talked about
just
extra temporal.
Like the whole thing is like there's so much other context you need to take into account. Just like you said, like if it's in your DMZ, probably should prioritize that a little bit more. If it's on a critical system, probably should prioritize that a little bit more. So there's all these other factors. Sometimes it's like, how hard is this to even test? Like,
I want to can we do this live? Like, I don't know if we can do this live.
Yeah, bring it up. We'll do it live.
So I've got it. I pulled up a CVE, just a random one I found. 7.5 is the CVSS 3 score, right? Wait, hold on. So this is always interesting. GitHub's given it a 9.8. I don't know if this is a GitHub bug. It's a Golang cloud. Like, I don't even know if this has anything to do with GitHub, but I didn't realize GitHub gives scores now. But it's got an MVD score 7.5 or 9.8, depending on what you're looking at.
Yeah. So if you look, Jerry, actually towards the end of it, where you've got all this cool stuff. So the difference is on GitHub, you see that C:H. That's confidentiality high. So they've got that. If you look at the MVD, which is NIST, they've got the CN, which is none. No confidentiality impact whatsoever. So these scores.
I mean, I get that. I get that's what affected the formula. What I don't understand, and I would need more information on, is like, what is this CCNA thing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, when did GitHub start getting pushed onto the NVD website and having their scores pushed in? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So here's the thing. You want me to tell you something else even crazier?
Yes.
Is sometimes Qualys and Tenable, who does Nexus, and all these people will actually not use the MVD scores because MVD is slow. So they will actually do their own base scores. So GitHub might give you one, because you also have to keep in mind, like, so this is the other thing, Jerry. Golang, and this is probably why you see Golang here. So GitHub, open source. Golang in this case is open source. So as there were all these malicious packages, vulnerable packages that are being put into open source, projects. So a lot of people, for their CI/CD pipeline, they'll use GitHub Actions. So GitHub, like, I guess it was like a couple of years ago, if I remember correctly, they did step up and they're like, listen, we're going to try to put a stop to this. So they actually do like some free, like, CVSS stuff on like certain packages, try to like protect open source stuff. So we don't have like another, knock on wood, terrible vulnerability that comes every December. Like we've had for every year for like, well, I guess we didn't have one last year, but it feels like every year prior to last year for like 4 or 5 years straight. But yeah, so like that's probably why you see that there. But anyways, getting back to it, the thing is, these scores are very subjective, and we can actually come back to that as our next fireside talking point once we're done talking about vulnerability management.
Once we're done eviscerating,
if you guys want to copy that CVE, and then let's jump over to the. So if we scroll down a little,
API.
All right. So what you're going to do is go up to your browser. Just go ahead in the browser and just pop in that CVE. Go back over to that. Copy that URL there. And actually, it's probably easier if you just go down to like number 2. If you see most recent CVEs.
Oh yeah.
Copy that URL equals CVE.
Yep.
You can just
I'm tracking.
Yep.
All right, let's see winner winner chicken dinner.
Clean that up a little bit.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, and it's supposed to, okay, here, let me pretty print
I was
it.
about to say it's really small on my screen. So yeah, so
Yeah.
all right, so you got here all of your standard like HTTP stuff, all this stuff. But if you look here in data, we've got the CVE here, right? And then we've got the EPSS score. So if we look at the EPSS score and you multiply that by 100, that is the chance of this being exploited in mass scale in the wild over the next 30 days. So that's
5% chance?
no. Times 100. So move the decimal place over. It's
Yeah.
0.054%.
Yeah.
Yeah, not even a 1% chance. Not even.
I was thinking 5%. It's it's 1/20th of a percent.
Yeah. So here's what else is kind of interesting. You see that percentile there?
Yes.
Of everything in there, right?
Yeah.
In EPSS, it's in the 24th percentile. So 24, talking percentiles. So we took all of them and then did like the statistical analysis. 24% are either the same EPSS score or less. So this is what's really cool is if you're doing stuff with EPSS and stuff like that, you can actually calculate the percentile in accordance to the vulnerabilities in your environment and actually say, hey, in our environment, based off the EPSS scores,
so you could compare, you could find the worst things in your own environment.
Correct.
Like without context of asset.
Now here's another important thing about EPSS. So Jerry, what if I told you if you came back tomorrow and you ran this again and the EPSS score was different?
All right. Well, if they're doing so much crazy public sentiment stuff, I could see that, right?
So this is the other interesting thing. CVSS scores never change. They're static. EPSS takes into account data from honeypots, sentiment. They actually scan GitHub, all these different places like your Metasploit repos for whether or not an actual like exploit code exists, all this stuff. They take all this data in there. So every single day, the EPSS score is actually updated. So if you actually go back to the EPSS website, and let's see here, if you scroll down.
Are you on the API?
No, on the API. We're over here on this like left-hand column. Let's see here. Do EPSS model at the top. Let's say that we're gonna have to explore and dig somewhere here. All right, back up a little bit. Scroll down. Data partners. All this great stuff. Keep scrolling. So there's a bunch of stuff here. It's real interesting. They talk about kind of the whole like number of vulnerabilities exploited in the wild, false positives, true positives, stuff like that. So you have a bunch of data here on that.
All right.
But not what we're looking for. So keep scrolling down. Somewhere in here, there's this beautiful hidden gem. And that's what we're looking for.
All right. This guy?
No. That's an interesting graph. Actually talking about the accuracy of EPSS versus like what's actually exploited in the wild. And
bro, this is like such a dunk. Like it's basically like this is the efficacy of CVSS, and like you can't even see like where EPSS is. It's so good.
Yeah. So if you look there, if you're patching everything that's like got a 9.9 CVSS and higher, what is that? Like not even like 10%? You're patching 10% of everything in the wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hush. That's harsh.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know. This is where we wanted to be.
No, that's actually not where we wanted to go. Dang. Oh.
Data and stats, research and presentation. Who's using it? Open source tools.
I guess click on API. It's been a while since I've been on the site. There's this.
Is this in your homepage?
No, unfortunately not. Well, I'll tell you what, it'll be Easter egg that we'll leave for the audience to find. Somewhere actually on this page, on one of these little tabs hidden in here, and actually they show you the vulnerabilities and that in the last like 7 days that have had the biggest jump in the EPSS scores.
All right, hold on. Let me see if I can do a little Google flu here. Last 7 days. What, most exploitation?
I don't think it'd be most exploitation, but sure. Let's do some Google foo here.
All
I'll see
right.
if I can do some Google foo really quick myself.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
actually, data and statistics, man. I should have. Man, look at that. Because I go back to the homepage, data and statistics. Scroll down.
Yep.
Keep scrolling. Look at that. Top rated
Oh.
CVEs in the last 2 days. So listen, if you don't want to go plug in every CVE there and you just want something really quick, here's the top rated CVEs from like the last 2 days, which not really anything there. Like 1.2%. Everything else is like less than like 0.1%.
So these were the when they say top rated CVs, they mean
so if you read right there, they've selected the 24 highest rated CVEs that's been released in the last 48 hours.
I see. Okay.
Now, if you scroll down a little bit more to the next graph.
I know, but hold on. Okay, I'll let you keep going, but I actually have a counterpoint to this.
Okay. Well, I did say it's not a silver bullet. I mean, I'm a big fan of EPSS.
No, I like it. Believe me, I like it. But what I want to say is CVEs, when they come out, it is the vendor announcing that there's a vulnerability, and hopefully they've done responsible disclosure with the researcher and there's a patch for it. So if it's just come out in the last 48 hours, then you wouldn't expect to see too much exploitation because it just hit the street, right? Unless it was a 0 day, right?
Well, and what is the number one thing that you think you hear from CISOs? The number one thing when I talk vulnerability management with CISOs is 0 days.
Oh my
God.
God.
Concerned about 0. Now listen,
I think
it's ridiculous to worry about 0 days.
So do I. That's another you're doing it wrong, CISOing wrong.
But you want me to tell you something?
The
greatest way to win the argument is Mr. CISO. We all know that CVE 2024 XXXXX is a 0 day. But based off EPSS, which has an accuracy of blah, 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 using this threshold shows that the chances and likelihood of this being exploited in the next 30 days is actually less than 2%. Therefore, you should communicate this to the board. You should not sweat this. You should sleep easy tonight.
Yeah.
So this is
hooking them up. Yeah.
Yeah. That first graph is your best friend for 0 days. Yeah. And the unridiculous hype sometimes around 0 days and patching them. Now, what's more interesting actually is CVSSs that have had the biggest change in scores. So if you look right there, CVE 2023 45727, no idea what that is, but it's up 41.3%.
Wow. If
we look at the top rated CVEs in the last 30 days, graph below it, this right here is godsend for prioritizing CVEs.
Oh, wow. Yeah, these two, these are like red hot, right? Nuclear.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. 2024-9474. Let's pull it up. All right. CVE 2024-9474. Let's check it out. PA privilege. See, here's the thing. This is crazy, okay? Privilege escalation in the web management interface. So you already have to, oh wait, you guys can't see that. You already have to have access to the PA at that point, or into the panorama or whatever they're using in order to exploit this. So I find that I'm not saying this to like defend. I'm saying I find it wild. I believe the information. I believe this one is getting gangbusters exploited. What I find wild is that it's a privilege escalation, not a initial, authentication bypass or some type of 0 day type thing. Like
so this actually touches on another great counterpoint. Jared, we might just talk about vulnerability management this whole time.
I know. Yeah.
This brings up another great point. So a lot of people focus on, once again, EPSS, CVSS, whatever you're scoring, whatever floats your boat, right? They focus on whatever is highest. And you even bring up like, listen, this is a privilege escalation. You already have to have access. So let me counter with this. How often do we have something that is like, just like a small little itty baby, like CVSS, like score of like 1.2 that we just slow, not really worth our time.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
A lot of people don't realize you can actually chain together CVEs and build a whole attack path. So Yeah, web management interface. It's not really supposed to be exposed to the internet. First of all, which may or may not be true in all cases. But you can actually go in for like some of the stuff that is not like an unauthenticated, like on RCE, essentially remote code execution. You can actually chain together multiple vulnerabilities and do a vulnerability chain and actually exploit it. So that's one of the other things you need to like be aware of is contextual information. What other vulnerabilities exist on an environment, and is there like a chain of CVEs based off the metric of like the data around it that you could chain together that would essentially create like an RCE. So I could take like 3 or 4 lower, scored CVEs, chain them together, and essentially like create my own RCE by chaining together exploits. Which actually, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure I've heard like John Strand talk about this too with some of his pen testers. Like, oh yeah, we just string together a bunch of stuff and we're able to pop things. So I mean, it's not anything new, but that's something that you also have to keep in mind in some cases.
Yeah, it's interesting. I almost wonder if this other one here, 2024-0012, let me see if it, I wonder if it's a PA12. 0012, was it 0012?
00, yeah, another PA.
All right, well, there you go.
Authentication bypass. What were we just talking about?
As if you were, I'm your Vanna White here, like just turning tiles around. The two that are being most exploited, one's an authentication bypass, and then basically immediately escalating privileges.
Yeah, so I mean that's another thing. So like there's all this stuff, and talking about vulnerability management, I'll drop this little tidbit, and maybe we can get off vulnerability management unless we have like a lot of questions about it. There's so many different factors taken into account for vulnerability management, right? One thing that I have discovered that I really like a lot is Zoom. I want to say back around COVID, created what they call VIS, which is like a calculator. So you can just go and you can just, go Google like Zoom VIS calculator, VISS. And what they actually do is they actually go and take like a bunch of this contextual information. It's not everything. It's not comprehensive. It was made for the Zoom environment. So like, V as in Victor, not dis. Like, diss track. No, not this. This.
Like this and that and this, right? All right.
I'm gonna have to start using my NATO alphabet with you, Jerry.
All right, here we go, you jerk.
So if you scroll up, there's talking about a lot about it, but let's just go to the calculator. You can actually go to the calculator, and if you go down, scroll down, you can actually go through and start talking about, okay, what's the impacted? So it's a third-party hosted tool library, so SaaS. It's a mobile application. It's a desktop application. It's a browser. So we can take all this different stuff, and what they've done is they've created.
I love the GRC gets a day in the sun where documentation's on here. Okay, keep going.
No, so like you can go through and you can take on all these factors. And like I said, they actually talk about how they came up with it. And I'm not saying people should use it. Carte blanche. Like I said, it was created for Zoom, but this is a great way to think about your vulnerability management program, to take into account CVSS, to take into account, EPSS, to take into account like what's actually impacted, how they all fit together. All this different stuff to actually prioritize what it is you're going to patch, because you can't patch everything.
Yeah, no, you can't. You can't patch everything. This is great. This is another good tool. You're right. Why do you think it is? I mean, does CVSS have like lobbyists working in DC? Like, why is no one talking about any other score?
It's a fantastic question. I think it's just one of those things that, as an industry, we do a lot of crappy things. And one of the things that we do as an industry, and like I said, I kind of, I talked about, I wanted to touch on this just a minute. A lot of things that we do in the industry, the state of the industry today is, I'll just lay it out there. So cybersecurity is a young field, right? We call ourselves an engineering discipline, right? We are the only engineering discipline that doesn't actually measure things. Like, it's a lot of. Could you imagine if I was going to go build a bridge and be like, oh yeah, drunk Uncle Larry said, like, just get enough 2x4s here and just get like a steel I-beam here, and like, yeah, probably can hold like, a semi. one time. Like that's the way we build and design things as an industry. You know, like it's cybersecurity is like stuck in the dark ages. Like, you know, and we'll eventually come out of it, but like we're still like going through and like putting leeches on people and bloodletting. I tell customers this all the time. Like it's actually insane. Like so many of our practices are not based in evidence or data. It's based in ivory tower. Like some person came down off the mountain back during the 90s and says, "Thou shalt do this way," and we still do it this way. And no one's actually like challenged or thought about it or done anything to the contrary. Yeah, a lot of stuff is very subjective. Like if you look at CVSS scores, we just saw it a minute ago. Like what was it, 7.4 and then 9.8 between 3 and 4 or 2 and 3?
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane. Depending on what version of CVSS I'm using, it might be a medium or a high. It might, in some cases. So we talked about CVSS 3 and how that we just kind of tossed that out, and then we moved on to 3.1. Now we call 3.13. Like the difference between CVSS 2 and CVSS 3, the real CVSS 3, not the 3.1 that we use today that we call 3. Was like mind blowing because you can get a high and you can get a low depending on like which one you're using. Like, it gives us a number. We're quantifying things, but if we're quantifying things with ordinals and no real like meaning behind it, and we're changing a formula, it's not really quantifying, right?
It really isn't, and it is very subjective, right? I agree. I haven't really thought about it like the way you said about it being like it's so difficult to do it quantitatively and objectively that there has to be some subjectivity. But yeah,
well, so I agree and disagree. So like, let's get into your side of the world, Jerry. Let's tip over some GRC sacred cows.
no, wait, okay.
Yeah. So like, you know, risk assessments are important. Not saying don't get a risk assessment. Not saying, you know, anything like that. Risk assessments are super like judgmental, like super subjective, like depending on the time and day. So actually, story time. Let's back up.
Okay.
So I had a client not too long ago. They're like, "Hey, we have all these pen test results from like the last 4 years. Come to find out, we haven't done anything with them. Like we have all these pen test findings. We haven't done a single damn thing with it." And it's like, all right. They're like, "We want you to come in and help us prioritize stuff." So got all the reports. It's interesting because like they do like change vendors somewhat, but they have a preferred vendor. Like I said, they hadn't fixed anything in 4 years. So it was a lot of the same issues over and over and over again. And what was real interesting is the same tester who did the thing for the same company, who all they had to do was to use the same report from the year prior, like went and changed the findings. And one time it was a medium one year, and then another year it was a high, and then another year it was a medium finding. Nothing's been patched or changed in the environment.
Yeah.
Like how do you come up with that? So no, subjectivity is like an issue. Now there are ways to get around subjectivity. I think you know this, Jerry, but I'm a huge fan of the FAIR framework.
Oh yeah. FAIR's great. Yeah.
Huge fan of the FAIR framework. Went through all the training, got FAIR certified. Like I live, breathe, and eat FAIR.
And for those who don't know, FAIR, it's an acronym, and I'll pull the acronym up afterwards, but basically it's the closest thing we get to a quantitative risk analysis where it basically dunks out the like percentage ranges of a bad event being realized. And it's based on evidence and data points. Go ahead.
Yeah. So FAIR is a model that actually is based in what they call Bayesian statistics. So if there's any math nerds out there like me, full disclosure, I went to school for like physics, fell into IT, so I'm super nerdy. I'm like the nerdiest guy you ever can meet. Like most of my coworkers are like, "Dude, you don't make bets with Brandon because he lives, breathes, and eats and thinks in statistics." So in statistics, there's actually two different types of statistics. The one you probably took in school is what they call Dang, I just had a brain fart live
Like
on
Newtonian. Hold on.
well, frequentist statistics. Sorry, frequentance. So what you're doing is you're looking at the frequency of something. So like I've got a coin, I flip it like 100 times. If it comes out, I get heads 50 times. Then I expect the coin to be 50%, right? So it's just based off like just counting. It's math, right? So there's this other field of statistics called Bayesian. All right, Bayesian's actually based off fuzzy logic. So let's say I give you a coin. And I say, Jerry, what's the probability of you flipping heads? You'd be like, listen, I did this in school. I know it's 50%. How do you know it's 50%? Well, because I did it. Well, what if you've never done it before? How do I know what the probability of getting, hit by this crazy cyber event is for my organization if I've never been hit by it before? Like, do I just have to wait 1,000 years for me to get hit by like a ransomware to actually know what my statistic is? So what Bayesian does, and this is where like if you go and you talk to like statistic nerds, there's like all this infighting between them. Because frequentist is pure mathematics.
There's drama in the
there's drama. Yeah, there's drama in everything, including math. It's crazy. So frequentists are like, we're pure, we count things, stuff like that. But once again, you have to have done it before. And the way you do stuff is you talk about like, oh, well, what's perfect example? Like, what is the mass of Jupiter? And the way they say it is they say, well, if we created 100,000 simultaneous universe, we expect Jupiter to have a mass of blah, 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 with an error margin, this thing, and this is our confidence thing. And it's like, okay, well, there's not 100,000 parallel universes of Jupiter, and I really care about the universe I'm in. So, like, what is that? So what Bayesian statistic does is it's considered subjective. And what it does is it actually takes expert knowledge, and it very much uses that whole, all right, I think, but it's what they call an inference engine. So it creates a bell-shaped curve of probabilities. And what you can actually do is you can actually guess when the event actually happens, you feed it back in, and it altered, because it's an engine, it actually alters the probability. So as you feed it more data, it becomes, you start off, it's subjective, but as you feed in more data, it actually gets more accurate. So if you have enough data, you can do the frequentist approach, you can do the Bayesian approach. They always come out to like the same thing. It's just whether or not you have the data there, you can actually replicate, or you can do experimentation. I can't experiment hacking a company 100,000 times.
Right.
But like what FAIR is based off, you get like the actual FAIR book, which is somewhere back here on this crazy bookshelf behind me. It's actually based on Bayesian statistics is the way it works. So it's actually coming into like an organization. I do this all the time for my customers, taking knowledge and information about their environment, very subjective, along with like some hard numbers of things in the SIM, security tools, stuff like that. And we're actually able to compute like a probability. And by probability, I don't mean one probability. This is the whole thing about FAIR. We don't like give you a single, we want to be accurate, not precise, right? If I tell you there's a 90% chance that you're going to get breached, that's precise, but that might not be accurate. Accurate would be somewhere between, like, Jerry, there's somewhere between a 30 and a 60% chance that this adverse event is going to happen, and this here's like the financial impact. So yeah, FAIR is like a way of taking statistics. It's based in science, Bayesian statistics to actually predict stuff. That Bayesian statistical model can be applied to so many different things. One of the things it's applied to is actually EPSS that we were just talking about.
Very good. Right? Yes, there it is.
So yeah, like the big thing that, I personally do with Panoptcy, the big thing that I try to like really push, and I don't know, I guess you could say I'm a warrior trying to push really kind of like evidence-based and data-based practices, trying to get us out of, once again, those dark ages and telling people to put down the leeches and let's do something that actually is backed in evidence or science or something.
I actually have a picture of Brandon going into a CISO meeting. There he is. And for those that don't know, this is like doctors during the Black Plague. They would wear these masks with like herbs and stuff inside the beak in order to not inhale the vapors that they thought, like ghosts that they thought the plague was. But anyway,
actually, interestingly enough, it wasn't that for that.
Jesus Christ! Like, this name of this episode is "You're Wrong, Jerry."
No. So this is actually interesting because my son and I actually had a conversation about this not too long ago. So they put the herbs actually in there because of bubonic plague, Black Death, the bodies in the street and in the places, the putrid smell of all the corpses was so bad that was the only way they could go in and observe without, vomiting everywhere because they just stack bodies and sick people in like these single houses. Sorry, Jerry. Sorry to tell you wrong. I won't tell you you're wrong anymore.
No, it's good. It's good. Hey, so I have a spare set of keys to the studio underneath the step. Just come on in, take the show over. I think I'm going to hang up the belt and call it a day here.
Then we can change the name to simply "You're Wrong, Cyber."
Yeah. It's simply oops. Yeah. No, please continue. Yeah.
No. So like, I mean, that's the biggest problem that I see with the industry right now is we are very subjective about things. We don't model things out. We don't try to understand things. We don't take a scientific approach. A lot of the ways that we do stuff is just based off like something someone said like a long time ago and sacred cows and things that, people just don't like to question.
Yeah, no, anyway. I get it, but I mean, this is really great information. Taekwon Gong wants to know what are your thoughts on SAFER. I'm not familiar. Is SAFER another type of like a statistical analysis framework?
I am actually not familiar with SAFER either. So I don't.
Okay. No problem. Okay, so let me ask you this, Brandon. Like, as far as metrics go with vulnerability management, since you're a big nerd on data, right? On math, like, it's always hard. Like, I don't care how many friggin' things you patched or, it's how many vulnerabilities showed up in our environment. Like, where do you stand, or what's your thoughts on metrics?
So like, all right,
for vulnerability management, because this is basically what the episode is.
So let's take a step back and let's talk about metrics in general. One thing. So first of all, like, there are what I'd classify as two different types of metrics. All right, there are useful metrics, and then there are what I call vanity metrics. All right, vanity metrics are just things there to make you look good and special and stuff like that, but they actually have zero real use, right? So like a SOC that talks about the number of attacks we stopped. Okay. Do you control the number of attacks that's coming in? Like, that's going to kind of move up and down. And then first of all, what's an attack? Like, anyways, how you're defining the metric, first of all. But then the second thing is, like, if you can't control the input to it, then does the metric actually make sense? Like, probably not. So anyways, so you got your vanity metrics, you got your useful metrics. So useful metrics for vulnerability management. You know what, to be honest, like, I'm going to probably talk about some ones that's never been heard here. So like, one of them ones that I really like is something called like high density risk, which essentially what you're doing there is you're saying, okay, let's take all of our platforms. So like Windows 7, Windows 10, Red Hat, VMware, all this stuff. All right. So we've got all these different platforms. And what we're doing is we are going and calculating the median number of risk on each of these platforms. So what you can actually do is you can actually say like, hey, the number of high density risk. So high, what's high? You define that, whether you're using CVSS or EPSS or whatnot. But you can actually say like, hey, Windows 7 has the most, on average, has the highest number of vulnerabilities, high risk vulnerabilities per asset. So if that's the case, that's either A, where we need to focus our patching efforts, or B, because you don't have to patch everything. Sometimes you can't patch everything, right? Maybe that is where we want to put more controls around. So like, let's say, perfect example, Jerry, you can actually probably tell me I'm wrong here because it's been a long time since I've worked in medicine.
Well, maybe. I just want to share with you that we have updated the thumbnail for this episode. It's actually called "You're Doing Several Wrong, Jerry." So just a quick update for the audience there.
Gotta shoot some lasers out of there, I'm like Godzilla or something, just tearing through. So no, what you can actually do is you can actually go and you can do something and say, okay, like, here's kind of where these high density vulnerabilities is. Once again, going back to what I was saying before, you messed me up showing that was Godzilla just wrecking things on a rampage. One of the things you can do is like, you might say, okay, well, we have a lot of like Linux devices, Red Hat devices. Actually, probably not even Red Hat. Well, let's just say Ubuntu or something like that, or maybe Windows XP. So we got all these high density risk on Windows XP. Well, first of all, like Windows XP should be out the door. But what I think about is, I know at one point in time, I had a client a long time ago that was a hospital network, and they had a Windows XP device hooked to an MRI machine. I don't remember exactly why. But
probably because, I mean, I could tell you why, but go ahead.
Anyways, it's been a long time, but it was something about like, we have this XP thing, it's done here, and this MRI machine is like $40 million, and pretty much the way the finance works is we've got to keep it for 10 years.
Yeah.
To get a return on investment that we expected for this. All right. So we can't like replace the Windows XP device. But here's the other thing is, we can't patch it either. Because if we patch it, it's no longer certified. And if it's no longer certified, if we have an MRI that comes back that shows cancer and there's no cancer there, like pretty much like the vendor that maintains the MRI machine is going to be like, "Ooh, we don't have any liability," and the hospital's on the hook for liability, and someone can sue us and yada. So we can't do it unless like the vendor installs the patch or the vendor approves the patch. So like, we're way behind on patching. So in those cases, you can actually say like, "Hey, these types of devices have the most like on average high risk there. Let's put controls around. Let's segment this off, put it in its own network enclave. Let's go and, we can't afford EDR on all our machines." Well, in the case of that XP machine, probably the vendor wouldn't let you. But if it wasn't per se, maybe you can add an extra like security control like EDR on that, or maybe you can buy like an IPS to put on the network there. There's a lot of different controls you can do that way. So high risk density is one. Another vulnerability you can do, and actually I think this is one that's actually kind of, if you do some Google foo, that's actually kind of like gain popularity, is a vulnerability half-life. So it's the number of days required to remediate half the vulnerabilities on an asset or in the environment. So like, let's say like on average, let's say like a Windows system vulnerability. How long on average does it take for us to patch 50% of a given CVE? Like, how quick can we patch? So you can actually see
for your entire environment.
Correct. So you can actually see like, hey, we get, if a CVE for a Windows system were to come out, we're able to get about half the environment, the half-life, half the environment patched for a given like Windows-based CVE in 14 days. But then maybe after that, because once again, it's like this weird exponential like curve or logarithmic curve, what you might see is it slows down after that. So you can actually predict how long it would take to completely eradicate a vulnerability from your environment, because, people aren't there. Issues with, certain business systems, maybe they don't get patch cycle. There's a bunch of different reasons. But like, you don't click a button at SCCM or whatever your patching solution is, and the vulnerabilities just plummet to zero. At least not in an enterprise environment.
No, that never happens.
Yeah. I mean, you can look at things like fix rate, which is like, the percentage of total number of vulnerabilities that's closed in a given month, like net capacity. I mean, there's a bunch of good like metrics. I can go on for days about vulnerability metrics.
So I'm curious, like you mentioned the Windows XP that you put additional controls, and you had a term like high density vulnerability. Like, what's the metric though? Are you reporting how many high density vulnerabilities you have? So you're like that. Is that number trend or?
It's not a trend. It's just like a kind of like a snapshot in time. So like what you're doing is you are just going and saying like, and it's by platform. So actually, let me see if I can find something real quick, a picture of it.
No problem.
And then you can let me share my screen.
Yeah, you should be able to just do it. And then I have to bring it on. And I wasn't making you look like Godzilla. You just have laser eyes because you're toasting me. I don't know. The Gen Zs gave me the laser eyes idea. I originally I originally just had this. You're doing it wrong, Jerry. And then Gen Z was like, you got to put laser eyes on it. And actually, you know what? It wasn't Gen Z. It was J Crypto. Aren't laser eyes for Bitcoin people? I think laser eyes are Bitcoin people. So, I don't know. We're calling J Crypto out, J Gold.
Yeah.
So if you're joining us and you don't recognize my voice, if you're listening audio only, it's because we've been listening to Brandon Poole for an hour eviscerate all of my my entire foundation of my career. I'm being hyperbolic for fun. Yeah, we've been listening to Brandon Poole talk about why you the royal you are doing vulnerability management wrong. And a lot of great things, talking about a lot of different scoring systems. CVSS is the belle of the ball, but EPSS is one that you should seriously give consideration to. We actually pulled it up and looked at it. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, fun stuff, fun stuff. I mean, that's what we're all here about, man. Just having fun, swell time. All right.
Are you ready to share your screen?
Oh, yeah, give me a minute, Jerry. I gotta find it first.
All right. Let me do this. I'm not Brandon Poole. Guys, I hope you're enjoying this. We are over time, but I want to give it a couple more minutes. Kind of let this thing breathe, because Brandon Poole is a treat. He's a treasure. It is the holiday season, and I feel like it's appropriate to give the gift that keeps on giving. Brandon Poole. If you don't know, Brandon Poole has actually been on the show multiple times before. Go Google Brandon Poole Simply Cyber. If you like his hot takes now, you're going to love all of the hot takes he's dropped on the program in the past. All right, Brandon's screen is here. Can you zoom in a little bit, or I can even do this. Yeah, there you go. I can do that.
I'm zooming, you're zooming, everybody's zooming.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
We're a bunch of zoomers, man.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so this right here is what I was talking about. So what you're doing is, like, you can see here, we've got our platform, so Windows 7, Windows 10, all these different platforms. And what we're actually doing is we're defining like what high risk is, whether that's using CVSS, EPSS, like you define what's high risk. But what we're doing is we're going and we're counting the medium number. And that's what this 18 here. Now we can also see the high end. So, like, the worst is 47 high risk, lowest is 1, but the median's 18, right? So I can see the range and stuff like that. And I've got this huge little like graph here. Like I said, it's not like a time series or anything like that. It's snapshot in time. But by looking at this, I can actually say, like, hey, like, what should I prioritize either patching high risk vulnerabilities on, or what should I focus on putting more controls in place to protect? So in this case, like Windows 7, I should probably patch that because it's Windows 7. If I can't patch the Windows 7 stuff, like I was saying earlier, can I put it in its own special enclave? Maybe all these Windows 7 boxes belong somewhere,
Yeah, no, that's a really great. Where is this resource? Can you give me a link in private chat and I can share it with the group?
I'll have to find this resource where I've got it from.
So you just had a screenshot for it. I see.
Yeah, I just had a screenshot. Yep. Yep.
Well, hold on. Let me Google the let me actually Google that title right there. High risk vulnerability density across the top asset platforms. See what we get. Ooh. All right. Well, I guess if you just Google that, you will actually see a whole bunch of really interesting graphics that support what we're talking about.
I would imagine it came from Kenna. So Kenna Security was like one of the people that actually created EPSS. They no longer exist. Cisco bought them.
Oh yeah, there you go. Cisco Vulnerability Management. Yep.
Yeah. So probably Cisco took them out to the Cisco graveyard and destroyed them. But no, they actually Kenna was like one of the groups that were really big on like doing like what's called risk-based vulnerability management, which using the EPSS score and actual data and stuff like that. So it actually, I believe I actually pulled it from Kenna. So Kenna used to have like a bunch of different things out there. Like I said, I don't know if they exist or you can even find them anymore. But probably it came from Kenna Security or Cisco Vulnerability Management now.
I like it, dude. So many awesome resources. EPSS. Obviously the KEV, right? And then dunking on CVSS scoring. Hey, I do want to share with everybody one thing that is, I guess, I would say a hot take, but based on everything that you've been dropping today, I feel like it's more like a lukewarm take. But CVSS 4.0 comes out, and when you look at when you look at CVSS 3.1, commonly referred to as 3, it's fine, but like it's very kind of rounded and generic, and it looks like something that, like, I don't want to say a child, but like it's very like speak and spell. CVSS 4 takes into account like a much more complicated dimensions of the environment and of the vulnerability and of exploitability and all this other stuff. And I love it, but I find it, first of all, I don't see anyone ever disclosing the CVSS 4.0 score when they talk about a vulnerability. And it's really, really complicated. It's complicated, which is fine. But I always think of IPv6, where like we solved IPv4 with RFC 1918. So then it became less important to get IPv6 rolled out. And then people were like, man, IPv6 is really hard. Like it looks hard. So, I mean, do you have any thoughts on the parallels between those?
I mean, yes and no. So I'm trying to think of the best way to approach this now. So
Okay.
like it part of it is like, listen, like just because a new standard gets dropped doesn't mean people will adopt it. Like let's think about like actual hardware and the number of different ports and things like that. Like, yeah, USB-A, USB-B, USB-C, Firewire, Thunderbolt. Like, can we go and like actually adopt one standard? No, hell no. Like, it's just not. So just because someone makes a new standard doesn't mean it's going to get adopted, even if, for better or worse, right? Especially if there's another workaround or something like that. People are natively like this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like we're an engineering domain, really and truly. I would really argue that cybersecurity is like not even really an engineering domain. It's a multidisciplinary domain, and that's something that I think we have to get a better grasp on, right? Because like this gets into psychology. So people are lazy; they're going to do the easiest thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just what it is. So CVSS 3 is just easier for people to comprehend, and it's simpler, and there's less factors. So what do you think is going to happen? They're just going to do that. It's one of the same thing. We were talking about EPSS. If you use the Qualys vulnerability scanner, it gives you EPSS. If you are using the market leader Tenable, doesn't have EPSS. If you're using Defender for Endpoint, because if you've got the right license for Defender for Endpoint, it will query vulnerabilities, and that's a whole nother topic for another whole nother day, the way it does that and issues with that. But Defender now gives you EPSS scores along with CVSS.
Uh-huh.
But like I said, Tenable, who's like the leader in the space, still hasn't adopted EPSS. Like,
Yeah, and probably only would if customers were leaving them because they didn't have it, right?
yeah, and it's one of those things like EPSS, we talked about it earlier. Like it's been out since 2019. So like you're talking about a standard now that's what, like over five years old. Most people haven't even heard of it. It's one of those things where like in cybersecurity, we don't really keep up with things. Things are good enough. Like I don't know. It's the status quo, man. That's what it is. The status quo just isn't good enough. But I don't know. Unless you're really out there and actively doing the research and stuff like that, a lot of these great things, you just don't hear about. Once again,
I feel like FAIR people have heard about, because the FAIR organization like spends time and money and effort to like push it.
You would be surprised. Like if you just did like a poll of people who worked in InfoSec, all of them's heard of NIST CFS. All of them has heard of all these other frameworks, PCI, stuff like that. You bring up FAIR, it's still a very small portion. And a lot of that just has to do with, once again, like a lot of the people in like tech, for some reason, like they really, a lot of them really don't like numbers and quantifying things and data and stuff like that, because like they have to come to grips with they were wrong, which is the whole topic of this. Like,
Yeah,
so
like,
much of what we said, much of what we talk about, like people don't like to be wrong. Like think about like any holiday, especially Thanksgiving, you've got that one family member who has complete different political opinions of you. There's nothing you can do to convince that person they're wrong. And there's nothing they can do to convince you that you're wrong. It's the same way in cybersecurity. It's just,
yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
Hey, so we do have a question in chat that I would love for you to answer. And it comes from Dill Pickle, which I really like that name. I don't recognize your name, Dill Pickle, but I hold on, there it is. So you do run Panoptcy, you do run your own company, you do manage security, you do differ incident response, you do all sorts of different things actually. How long did it take you to feel comfortable to go all in on your own differ?
Oh,
Is that another show?
I mean, I wouldn't. I'm trying to think of the best way to approach it. So I wouldn't say it's like a time range. Does that make sense? Like you can do internal digital forensic incident response and you could go 15, 20 years before you feel comfortable. Or you can work for like an MSP or a big like differ firm and do, 10 cases a month or something like that. I mean, it just has to do with like repetition and getting comfortable with things. I mean, me personally, like, I don't know. I've been in the field for like over 15 years now. I feel old, but I've been doing it for a while. I don't just do like differ stuff. To be honest, like I've kind of moved away from doing a lot of digital forensic incident response, and that's mostly because of just the nature of the beast, which is another thing we can talk about: cyber
Yeah,
insurance, the mess.
that should be a whole other episode.
Yeah,
Maybe we can have you back sooner than later. Because I'll have to look. I think I was trying. God, I was trying to like not do a lot of work the last 2 weeks of the month just so I could like have a small break in 2024.
Jerry, I don't think I've been on the show in like 2 years.
No, I know you haven't been, but I'm just saying like anyways, keep going.
Yeah. So I mean, like the biggest thing is I personally don't do a lot. Like I guess like I technically started the company in like 2018. When I started the company, I was working for SANS as a SANS instructor at the time. So most people might not know this. If you're a SANS instructor, you actually are not employed by SANS. You are a contractor, and you had to do a whole 1099. So the company was actually started originally for me to take that SANS money, put it into like a corporation, tax stuff, yada, yada, yada. And then also do like some consulting around like people I'd meet from teaching SANS. For me to actually go and start doing like hardcore, like differ stuff, I guess if you go and you see my older videos, I worked for Soteria back then. I worked for Soteria probably up until like 2020. I was doing differ stuff for them. COVID hit. I needed like a little bit of a break. So I kind of took like a leave of absence, just wanted like take a break right after COVID and was just chilling. And someone reached out. Someone I had taught in SANS class was like, "Hey, I got this opportunity for you, Brandon." And it actually wasn't even differ. It was actually consulting around like socks and stuff like that. Long-term opportunity. I was like, well, I got this company, did that. I picked up the differ stuff and was doing that on the side. But I would say like it's not really about time. It's just about like the number of like differ cases that you see and the variation in them. So like if you're just working on ransomware, like let's be honest, a lot of different stuff is ransomware. You can feel very comfortable working ransomware cases, but the first time you have an insider threat case, TTPs, the whole way you investigate that's slightly different than a ransomware case. So
Yeah. And I've looked at the calendar while we were talking. I do have January 9th open. January January 9th is available. My next available. We're booked up through like mid-February, but for some reason January 9th does not have a guest right now. So Brandon, if you want to come back, check your schedule, let me know, and we can talk about basically the reality of differ, not the technical pieces of executing differ work, but the business of differ. Where do you get the work? What's this downflow kind of work you get? How do you get on the insurance company approved lists and stuff like that? I don't know if that's too much inside baseball that you wouldn't want to talk about.
no, like I said, I've kind of like moved out of that side of the world just because of the way that cyber insurance works and everything else. So I don't mind really like sharing that stuff. I do like some different stuff. I still do different stuff. It's just like a completely different model, to be honest. But yeah, I don't mind sharing that stuff at all. Man, I thought I'd get a whole lot more questions, but I guess I've just been raging on, like just.
Yeah. So the questions, I actually talked to Mod Chat earlier. And what do you mean, Chris K. Hall, January 9th, so random? I do Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. That's a crazy thing. I do this show Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. and have for like 3 years. And I still people, I think they suspect that I just go live randomly with guests. I got derailed. What was I about to say? Oh,
questions. I was about to say,
yeah.
I haven't really been paying a whole lot of attention to chat. It just seems like a bunch of people just chit chatting. I thought we were getting more questions.
I will say, I asked that question in mod chat earlier. We had 70 people at peak and we were hovering around 61. I think what happened, Brandon, was you were just like dumping so much knowledge on people that they were overwhelmed. There were a couple questions that came in, but you literally were answering them as you were talking.
Oh man!
So there was no
that sans teaching mentality. You know, making them drink from the fire hose. Hold on, I'll answer your question in just a minute. What was your question? Oh, I already answered it. Let's keep drinking from the fire hose.
Yeah, chat does get quiet when knowledge is getting dropped, as Jay Gold points out. So don't take it as a bad sign or a disrespect sign.
None taken, man. You can't hurt my feelings, man. I ain't got any.
Oh yeah, no, you're hard gas, yeah. Hey, so we are gonna have to wrap here, but before we go, you got any projects coming up, speaking engagements, anything like in the new year that you want people to know about?
Oh, so I mean, like, I guess like the big thing I've got coming up, and I think you're aware of it, Jerry, is I've been asked to speak for the Lima Charlie. I guess it's not Lima Charlie; it's actually Cybersecurity Cares, but it's ran by Christopher Loth over at Lima Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
But we're doing a telethon actually here next week, if I remember correctly.
Week?
Yeah, I think so. I'd have to look at my calender. But I'll be on. I'll tell people.
Yeah, tell me when it is, because I'm actually part of that, and I'm the first act or whatever.
Oh Jesus, Jerry! You okay? 2 weeks and two. No. Hold on.
What's the date? I might be on travel.
Hold on. It is
definitely before Christmas.
Oh man, I'm not seeing it on my calendar.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not seeing it either. I had the call with Chris. Hold on, this is important.
Oh no, it's 19th. So it's next Thursday. It's just I've got too much stuff on my calendar. So no, I'm actually speaking at 1 p.m. on Cybersecurity Cares stream. You can find it by just Googling Cybersecurity Cares. Donate money. It's actually for a good cause. We're raising money for a nonprofit. It's Becky's Fund this year. So it's, domestic abuse and stuff like that we're trying to combat and getting funding for people around that. I'll be on the telethon that we're doing like at 1 p.m. They're going to have a bunch of like great speakers. Jerry may or may not be there.
I will be there. I will definitely be there. I've confirmed. It's funny. I found it on my calendar. It's just my calendar is so busy that like I actually have something covering it up partially. But yeah, I'm going live at I think 9 a.m. We're actually going to be doing you know how I do the show every morning, and from 9 a.m. to 9:30 we do jaw jacking. So to get jaw jacking on that 19th, you'll have to come over to Cybersecurity Cares, because we'll be doing a special version of jaw jacking over there, not on the Simply Cyber channel. So
you know what? I unfortunately rarely get to make any of your live streams in the mornings, but I might actually be able to tune in and watch that one live. In fact, I know I will.
That'll be good. Yeah. That'll be a fun one. And you can tell me I'm wrong.
I'll just go and harass you from chat.
Yeah, exactly. No, I love it. So Cybersecurity Cares, you can hear Brandon. What are you doing during that telethon segment?
I have honestly no idea. I've never had an idea whatsoever. Usually Krista's like an amazing host, and there's more than one guest on and stuff like that. So he brings up something and we just have like a fireside chat just like this, a lot of rambling, stuff like that. I want to say last year I was on with Lee Salt, who is a part of the stream this year. And he's got a lot of like DFIR experience too. And we just talked a lot about like things that we'd seen out in the wild and how, digital forensic incident response trends have shifted and stuff like that. I think Lee was actually a part of like the whole, there's this terminology of sniper forensics, which was like cutting edge back in the day. Now everyone kind of does it. But I think Lee was like actually one of the early people to bring up that concept and talk about the concept of sniper forensics. So, he's kind of a thought leader in the space, but like him and I were on there and we talked about that. I mean, other years we've talked about, different random things. I think we play games sometimes on it. It's a good time, man. It's a good time,
Yeah, it is
losing
fun.
money. Like, yeah, that's probably the next biggest thing that I've actually got planned for a speaking engagement. As far as other speaking engagements, like I don't really have anything planned. I try not to plan too far out. I've been trying to keep my calendar a little bit light, but yeah.
Well, let me know if you succeed at that.
You can always find me on like LinkedIn though. Like if you really want to connect or talk to me, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. If you want to see how Panoptcy can help you, you can go over to the Panoptcy website, fill out the contact us form. I'm usually pretty quick about getting back in contact. So yeah.
Yeah, that's another good point. So, I mean, obviously we've been talking to Brandon. He can do a whole host of things, super, super smart in the InfoSec space. But if you're like a solo operator or you got some budget and they're trying to like either burn it for the end of the year or they're trying to bring out external expertise in order to kind of like get a leg up. I don't know if you get a lot of these clients, but I've been reached out to by organizations that have like a guy who like, or a lady that is like the InfoSec person, but they're like mid-tier. They're like not in over their head, but they can't do some of the bigger things that they want done. So they'll bring you in and kind of do like, an enterprise risk assessment and kind of help you shape where you should be going and stuff like that. So I don't know if you get a lot of work like that, but Brandon would be amazing at that as well, obviously.
Yep. I'll go ahead and say like a lot of our customers, the best way to describe it is when every other vendor has failed you, you come to me and talk to me. We are the bar rescue of cybersecurity service providers.
Oh my God, you should totally take that. That would be okay. Like haircut fish. Can we get a meme, please, of friggin' Brandon as John Taffer? That would be awesome. Yelling, "Shut it down." Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. Like after you talk to like the big four providers, because that's what a lot of enterprises do. They're like, "Oh, we're gonna go talk to Deloitte, EY." Not taking a shot at them, but usually talk to a big provider. You talk to like Gartner or some other thought leader on vulnerability management. You pay like $100,000, and then they're like, "We did that, and we tried to do some of the stuff, and our vulnerability management program still sucks." And you do some other things, and then like eventually you end up here, and they're like, "We should have started with you." So yeah, I'm like the bar rescue. After you do all the like, you read the business book, you're unable to save your bar, you come to me.
There you go. I mean, that's a great way to market it and remember it. All right, guys. So Brandon's on LinkedIn. I saw Sage Clements. You asked to maybe get some a conversation going with Brandon. Like, go on LinkedIn and connect with him over there. He can definitely connect. Obviously, on December 19th, you can be part of the Cybersecurity Cares at 1 p.m. where Brandon will be there. I'll definitely push it out on socials when Brandon goes live. But we're going to get on out of here, Brandon. It's about that time.
Sounds good. Man, I was only able to tip over cows in one section of InfoSec. There's so many untouched areas, but I guess we're going to save that for January 9th. And
yeah, we can book it for January 9th. We might even have to start a separate podcast, just me and you.
A whole series of just
a whole series called "You're Doing It Cyber Wrong" with Brandon Poole. And I'll just feed you.
Brandon crapping on sacred InfoSec cows.
100%. I would love to get you and John Strand on the same meeting and talk about that. Oh my God. All right, guys, we got to call it. Hey, I want to say thank you to Brandon Poole. Obviously, just great knowledge bombs. It has been too long since Brandon came on. I'm glad you came on. We're going to get you here more often for sure. And to everybody in chat, you guys, we had numbers strong, a lot of regulars, a lot of newcomers like Dill Pickle, newcomer, but Nick Barker, base case, coming back, FedEx, etc. The mod team, thank you so very much, guys. I'm Jerry from Simply Cyber. He's Brandon Poole. Until next time, y'all, stay secure. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that content. Keep the cybersecurity train going by connecting with the other Simply Cyber community resources. We have the Discord server that's lively and always keeps the conversation going. You can connect with me directly on LinkedIn. And also every single weekday morning on the Simply Cyber channel, we're doing live daily cyber threat briefings, 8 a.m. Eastern time, as well as Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We're doing live stream interviews with industry experts, and we produce videos that we push out every Wednesday morning. I'm Jerry from Simply Cyber. I hope you